Some evenings seem ordinary, but end up triggering a silent upheaval. A woman walks into a luxury restaurant. No one recognizes her, no one respects her. They assume she doesn't belong here. And within just 72 hours, a single business card was placed on the table and an entire power structure began to shake. What made a seasoned manager lose his career overnight? Who had the courage to stand up in a room full of traditionalist stakeholders? And why did a video less than 1 minute long force an entire industry to confront its reflection? This is not a story about a CEO. It's about a choice between privilege and fairness. Watch until the very end, because the final twist will leave you saying, "I never imagined one small action could bring down an entire empire." Please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to update our latest videos. Evening settled over Providence as early winter wind slipped through the cobblestone streets of the financial district, where every glowing light exuded opulence and privilege. Among the finely dressed crowd moving in and out of upscale restaurants, no one paid attention to the black woman in a simple navy wool coat, her hair neatly tied, walking slowly but deliberately toward the largest restaurant in the area, the Belgrave Room. Her name was Celina Ward. On paper, she was the CEO of Ward Harlow Dining Group, a company that owned more than 40 restaurants across the United States. But tonight there was no entourage, no private driver, no advance notice, and most importantly, no one knew who she was. She had read the troubling comments in recent reports that certain branches, especially the Belgrave location in Providence, had begun showing signs of discrimination against guests who didn't look the part. Detached service, condescending glances, off-handed remarks never formally documented but clearly present in anonymous online reviews. This was no longer a training issue. It was a cultural rot, embedded in the system. Celina had once been a teenage waitress at a roadside diner in Atlanta. She knew what it felt like to be judged for how you looked. And because of that, she had once promised herself, if she ever led an empire, every customer, rich or poor, would be treated with equal dignity. But now, as cracks formed beneath the polished surface of her own empire, she couldn't sit in an office and wait for filtered reports. She needed to see the truth with her own eyes. Stepping through the revolving doors of the Belgrave Room, Celina slowly removed her gloves, her sharp eyes sweeping across the grand lobby, crystal chandeliers, mahogany-paneled walls, well-heeled guests draped in designer coats. No one looked up, no one smiled. That was the first sign. She approached the front desk, composed on the outside, but mentally noting every detail, how the staff bowed politely to the white couple who entered just before her, and how the receptionist's eyes turned coldly indifferent the moment they met hers. Celina knew exactly what this was. The real performance had just begun. From the moment Celina Ward stepped into the main lobby of the Belgrave Room, she felt it, the first scrutinizing gaze. It wasn't from curious guests, but from Douglas Harlow, the restaurant's longtime manager, and the very man she had come to observe. Celina walked straight to the front desk, dressed modestly, her demeanor composed. No diamonds, no Chanel, no Gucci, just a black woman, neatly dressed but entirely unassuming, trying to book a table at a restaurant notorious for its selective clientele. Douglas, hair slicked back and a half-smile tugging at one corner of his mouth, approached. His tone was soft, but laced with subtle condescension. "Ma'am, are you sure you have a reservation here?" Celina replied politely, "Yes, table for one, Celina, 7 p.m. Douglas glanced down at his iPad, raising one brow slightly, as if deciding whether or not to validate her claim. He nodded slowly, then gave her a top-to-bottom glance before delivering a remark so gentle it could cut skin. "We rarely get guests dining alone, especially at a peak hour like this." Celina didn't flinch. Her eyes held steady. She knew this wasn't a test of power. It was a test of dignity. Douglas continued. "Typically, guests who choose to experience the Belgrave Room dress a little more, fittingly. I suppose you're trying something different tonight." It wasn't just a comment. It was a coded warning, a subtle classification. In Douglas's eyes, she didn't belong. Not because of her behavior, not because of her attitude, but because her appearance didn't match the image of the elite clientele he was used to serving. A nearby female staff member looked momentarily uncomfortable, as if about to speak. But Douglas glanced at her, silently signaling her to stay quiet. She obeyed. Celina took a deep breath, then offered a soft smile. "I'm looking forward to dinner." Douglas forced a smile in return, but his eyes betrayed his disdain. He snapped his fingers at a nearby waiter. "Seat the lady near the kitchen." In that moment, Celina felt the air grow cold around her. Not from the ventilation, but from the indifference. The server nodded without a word, leading her past tables adorned in crystal ware and candlelight, past tuxedoed couples and women in evening gowns sipping premium wine, until they reached a small table near the service entrance, where the sizzle of pans and calls from the kitchen could be clearly heard. Celina sat down. She opened the menu, but didn't turn a single page. She didn't need to read the dishes. Tonight's main course was the truth. The table Celina had been seated at wasn't exactly dirty, but it was clearly the kind of spot people forgot. Tucked right next to the swinging doors leading to the kitchen, where waitstaff bustled in and out non-stop, where the sizzle of frying pans and shouts of orders drowned out the soft jazz playing in the background. Each time the door swung open, the smell of grease overwhelmed the subtle scent of her perfume. At a restaurant as high-end as the Belgrave Room, where you sit is its own silent language of status. And though Celina had booked in advance, she'd been pushed to the lower tier. No flowers, no candles, no one asked, "Still or sparkling water, ma'am?" A couple entered just after her. A white man in a navy suit, arm in arm with a woman in a stunning emerald evening gown. Celina heard them clearly when the woman said, "We forgot to call, but we're hoping there's still a table." Douglas Harlow appeared as if summoned by radar. He smiled warmly immediately. "No problem at all. For valued guests like you, there's always a table." He led them to a window-side seat, where golden light cascaded from a French-style chandelier, where the view looked directly out onto the central plaza's fountain. That table, according to the reservation system Celina had used internally, was the one she had selected. Now it no longer belonged to her. Celina pulled out her phone, scrolling back through her confirmation email. There it was, clearly stated, Table 14, West Window View. But she had been placed at Table 27, adjacent to kitchen. A waiter approached without saying a word, dropped the menu onto the table with a dismissive flick. "What'll it be?" Celina looked up, about to ask why her table had been changed, but the waiter had already turned away, gone before she could speak. A very professional kind of indifference, cold, efficient, leaving no trace. She didn't get angry. Her eyes kept watching. Scattered throughout the dining room, she noticed a few other black diners, all placed near walls, in the dim corners, where light was scarce and servers scarce even more. Meanwhile, Every center and window table was filled with white guests, dressed in luxury. One older black man sat alone in the far corner, his water glass untouched. He reached for it, signaled twice, ignored both times. Meanwhile, at the central tables, a waiter poured wine glass by glass, each with a generous smile. Every small difference, seat location, lighting, level of service, tone of speech, all wove together into a silent symphony of segregation. Celina gently closed the menu. She didn't order anything. Instead, she opened the Ward Harlow Dining Group's internal service monitoring app and typed, "Table reassigned without cause. No confirmation with guest. No welcome drink." Staff failed to greet or interact. Seating hierarchy clearly based on appearance. Stratified service culture is present at this flagship location. She set the phone down, exhaled slowly. One evening, one table, and a truth brought to life. Something she had seen only as numbers and reports for years. Tonight it had sound, faces, and flavor. And it was sitting right in front of her. The restaurant doors opened once more. A cold gust from the streets of Providence swept in, carrying with it the hesitant, faint footsteps of a newcomer. Celina turned slightly. An older woman had stepped inside. Her hair, streaked with silver, was neatly pinned back. She wore a faded ash-gray wool coat, frayed at the hem, and clutched a faux leather handbag tightly, as though it were the only thing of value she owned. Her eyes flickered with uncertainty, unsure whether she should take another step forward. The hostess this time, a young woman, didn't hide her hesitation as she glanced at Lucille Harper. No one asked if she had a reservation. No one greeted her with a polite nod like they did the wealthier guests. Eventually, Mrs. Lucille was escorted to a table near Celina. A cold, forgotten row tucked beside the service station where diners were easy to overlook. Moments later, a male waiter approached. Celina had already noticed him earlier. Gelled hair, smug posture, and eyes gleaming with superiority. He dropped the menu on the table, then stood with arms folded, staring at Lucille like she was some kind of test. Lucille spoke softly. I'll have the vegetable stew, the small portion, please." She nearly whispered, as though afraid of ordering something too expensive. Her hands trembled slightly as she fumbled through her purse for her reading glasses. The waiter curled his lip and replied in a tone dripping with sarcasm, "Just the soup? Of course, let's hope it suits your taste." Then he turned away. Not before muttering under his breath, loud enough for both Lucille and Celina to hear, "Nothing like coming to a fine dining restaurant just for soup." A stifled chuckle came from behind the counter. Another employee had heard it and joined in. Celina glanced at her watch and immediately logged the incident's time on her phone. Lucille's voice cracked as she mumbled, "Thank you." She bowed her head, eyes downcast, hiding the shame that was already clearly visible to everyone. Celina felt her throat tighten, not because of the insult itself, but because of how no one around reacted. Other tables kept eating. The music continued to play. Waiters passed by like nothing had happened. A middle-aged man in designer LV sportswear nearby muttered to his companion, "They really ought to know where they belong." Celina needed no further investigation. She had seen enough. This was a system in which people like Lucille Harper were treated not as guests, but as service disruptions. And the discrimination here wasn't loud or explicit. It was cumulative dash. A pattern of glances, of distance, of seating assignments, of tone, and most of all, of collective silence. And that system, Celina knew for certain, was crafted under the authority of the man she was here to confront, Douglas Harlow. She opened her notes and typed the final line. Test complete. Discriminatory stratification is being actively maintained, with clear subtext in service language. Most vulnerable targets, elderly, people of color, modestly dressed individuals. Behavior reinforced through group norms. Enabled by managerial silence. She set her phone down, closed her eyes for a single moment, to steady herself. Then, across the room, the gentle clink of porcelain. Mrs. Lucille's spoon tapping her soup bowl echoed in Celina's mind like a warning bell, a signal that the moment for intervention was drawing near. The next morning, Providence was shrouded in overcast skies, a thin veil of mist clinging to the glass facades of the city's tall buildings. Celina Ward didn't return to the Belgrave room as a guest. Today she stepped in as an invisible observer, but with eyes that missed nothing. She wore an earth-toned coat, thin-framed glasses, and her hair in a low bun. A discreet lapel camera was hidden beneath her silk scarf. She sat at a table near a large pillar, right by the service corridor, a vantage point from which she could observe the entire movement of the staff. Within less than 30 minutes, Celina documented at least 4 separate instances of inequity. An elderly black man dining with his grandson was ignored by the waitstaff for 10 full minutes, while other tables that had just sat down were immediately asked for their orders. When he gently called for assistance, one of the servers glanced his way and then pretended not to hear. An Asian woman wearing a market-bought jacket inquired about the wine list. A young waitress responded with a stuttering tone. "Are you sure? You want to see the premium options?" Behind the counter, a few snickers escaped. They didn't laugh loudly, but their sideways glances made it clear she was being treated as a punchline. A middle-aged working-class couple ordered 2 burgers, only for the server to take back the menu and gently suggest, "We specialize in dry-aged beef here. Would you like to try something a little different?" When they politely declined, no one asked if they wanted drinks. Celina recorded everything. Every word, every glance, every silence. She wasn't just taking notes, she was listening to the things that weren't said. The furrowed brows, the exasperated sighs, the twisted smiles of guests deemed out of place. But then she began noticing something else. A different kind of complicity. It wasn't just the few employees who acted poorly. It was also the ones who did nothing. Those who saw the bias clearly and chose to look away. The waiters who could have spoken up, but instead just chuckled or walked quickly past with eyes down. This system wasn't rotten because of a few bad actors. It was rotten because too many stayed silent. In the middle of it all, Celina noticed something significant. Every time cruel laughter echoed, only one staff member never laughed. Janelle Rivers. Celina pulled out her phone and opened the report she'd been updating since the previous evening. She typed, "The Belgrave Room's problem isn't just individual bias. It's a contagious internal culture, where staff share an unspoken understanding of who is worthy of proper service. Those who don't fit are avoided, ignored or mocked through coded sarcastic language. This culture is sustained not only by the ones who act, but by the ones who watch." She paused. Her cup of tea on the table had gone cold. She hadn't taken a single sip. Celina looked around. A grand restaurant, elegant lighting, walnut wood, crystal glass, built to make people feel special, but only for those who belong to a certain class. And Celina knew, if something didn't change soon, The Belgrave Room wouldn't just lose its reputation, it would become a symbol of an outdated industry. And she already had a plan. Afternoon at the Belgrave Room drifted on under the sparkle of crystal chandeliers, the quiet clink of silverware, and conversations thick with urban polish. Celina Ward remained at her usual table beside the wooden pillar, her discreet lapel camera still hidden beneath her scarf, recording everything. But today she wasn't just observing the guests, she was watching the staff, especially one in particular she had noticed the day before. Janelle Rivers, a young woman, slim, with neatly tied curls and eyes that always looked forward. Not confrontational, but alert. Unlike the other servers chatting casually at the counter, Janelle worked in quiet focus. She didn't grovel, nor did she laugh along. She was simply silent. When co-workers snickered behind the back of an elderly guest, ordering a basic meal, Janelle was the only one who didn't laugh. When a brown-skinned woman in modest office wear was denied a request to change tables, Janelle glanced over, expressionless, but her fingers tightened around her tray. And just a few minutes later, Celina saw her walk over to that same guest's table, quietly setting down a glass of water with a soft question. "Would you like some extra napkins, ma'am?" Celina began to count them. All the things no one asked her to do, but Janelle still did. Tiny gestures, but unmistakably human. Then came the opportunity. As Janelle passed Celina's table with an empty tray, Celina gently called out, "Excuse me, miss." Janelle stopped immediately. "Yes, ma'am. How can I help you?" Celina gave a slight smile, pointing to her water glass. "Could I have a bit more ice?" "Of course," Janelle replied, but as she turned to go, Celina softly added, her voice lower now, more private, "How long have you worked here?" Janelle hesitated. It was clear she wasn't used to being asked such questions, especially not by a guest. "Almost 7 months," she replied quietly. Celina nodded. "And how do you feel about it?" Janelle paused, then glanced downward for a moment. "It's restaurant work, you know. Some days are good, some are tiring." But Celina didn't let go. Her next words were quiet, but firm. "You don't seem like the others." Silence, only the soft notes of jazz from hidden speakers above. Then Janelle looked up, for the first time meeting Celina's gaze directly. No panic, no defense, just something raw, something deeply human surfaced in her expression. "I just think everyone deserves respect, no matter what they order, what they wear, or how they look." Celina froze for a second. That answer wasn't a declaration. It was a simple truth, the kind that's always been there, just forgotten by everyone else. She smiled. "What's your name?" Janelle Rivers." Celina nodded, engraving the name into her memory like carving into stone. "Thank you, Janelle." "Ma'am?" Janelle blinked, a bit surprised. "It's nothing," Celina replied, turning her gaze away, as if their exchange had been no more than a passing courtesy. But in her eyes, everything had changed. She had just found a witness. And more than that, an ally. Evening had just settled over Providence. The golden glow of the Belgrave Room's chandeliers shimmered brighter as the sun dipped behind the city's historic rooftops. Celina Ward, dressed simply but with a changed look in her eyes, stood from her table after a heavy, deliberate breath. She had seen enough, recorded enough, and now it was time to confront. She didn't call for a server. She walked directly toward the bar where Douglas Harlow, the restaurant's manager, stood holding a glass of red wine, laughing with 2 regulars who looked like real estate brokers. Celina stopped a few steps away. Her gaze was cold and steady as steel. Douglas turned, momentarily surprised at the boldness of someone he'd dismissed as just another wrong type of guest. "Is there an issue?" Douglas asked, his voice tinged with annoyance at being interrupted. "We need to talk, privately." Celina's voice was calm but firm. He frowned, but sensing the attention of onlookers, he nodded and led her into a side hallway just off the main dining room, toward one of the small private meeting rooms reserved for VIPs. They entered, the door closed behind them, no jazz music, no candlelight, just two people, two worlds, facing off. Douglas crossed his arms and leaned back against the table as if he already knew where this was going. "You want to complain? We have a feedback department. This isn't—" "Let's not pretend," Celina cut him off, her eyes ice cold. "You know exactly what's happening here. Don't act like I didn't see it." Douglas smirked. "You're upset about being seated near the kitchen, about ordering something less expensive. Let me tell you something. We have standards here. Not everyone fits the experience the Belgrave room is meant to provide." Celina said nothing. She let him keep going. "Our guests come here to feel special," he continued, voice growing more confident. "And the truth is, some people, whether they have money or not, never bring that feeling. You understand? This is a playground with limits. I saw you the moment you walked in, and I knew you didn't belong." "1 second, 2. Celina stepped forward, slowly, deliberately, her eyes never leaving his. "You just said, 'I don't belong here.'" Douglas didn't respond, but his smirk, half arrogant, half dismissive, said everything. Celina gave a small nod as if confirming what she'd just heard. Then she reached into her bag, took out her phone, typed, sent. "You've just witnessed the moment everything changes," she said softly. "I've just submitted an urgent report to the executive board of Ward Harlow Dining Group, with full documentation, images, video, your own words, and testimony from staff." Douglas froze, his face drained slightly. "Who are you?" Celina pocketed the phone, stood tall. "Just a guest who didn't meet your standards, but also the one rewriting those standards." Douglas stepped closer, voice now gritting low. "You can't do this. I've run this place for 20 years. And you turned it into a playground for the entitled," Celina replied, calm and razor-sharp. "I don't need to shout. I only need the truth." She turned and walked away, leaving Douglas standing frozen in a room that now felt colder than ever. Everything he once controlled was slipping through his fingers. The next morning, a light mist blanketed the sky above Providence. Soft rays of early sunlight filtered through the high-rise windows, pouring into the grand lobby of the Belgrave room, where life seemed to carry on as usual. Or at least it tried to. Douglas Harlow stood at the manager's station near the front desk, eyes flicking anxiously over the reservation book. Since the strange conversation the night before, with that woman, the unsuitable guest, who had left him unsteady, sleep had evaded him. A vague unease pulsed inside him like a ticking clock in the middle of the night. And then, the revolving doors opened. The lobby seemed to pause, just for a beat. Celina Ward stepped inside. But she was no longer the modest woman in the grey sweater from the night before. Today she wore a perfectly tailored navy blue suit, crisp-collared, black patent heels that clicked with authority, and her hair was tied neatly back, revealing a face that was calm, yet commanding. She didn't need a single word. She didn't need a single expression. She walked as though the room parted for her presence alone. The staff exchanged glances. Some recognized her, the woman seated near the kitchen last night. But today her entire essence was transformed. She didn't need to scream her importance. Her presence said it all. Douglas stood frozen for a moment, but forced himself to speak in a formal tone, trying to regain control. "Good morning, ma'am," he said politely. "Do you have a reservation?" Celina said nothing. She reached into her handbag, took out a matte black business card, its silver edges gleaming with precision. She placed it gently on the counter, holding it down with a single finger so it wouldn't slide. Then stepped back half a pace, her eyes locked on the man now standing stiff in front of her. Douglas looked down at the card. Celina Ward, Chief Executive Officer, Ward Harlow Dining Group, and in that moment, time froze. A server nearby let out a quiet gasp. Another dropped the pen in their hand. The entire lobby turned to face her. Guests checking in paused and slowly turned their heads. Everyone looked at Douglas, then Celina, then back to the business card, as if doubting their own eyes. The silence lasted no more than 10 seconds. But to Douglas, it felt like a century. His mouth opened, trying to form words, but his throat was dry. The words caught behind his tongue. Celina didn't smile. She didn't gloat. Her voice was low, but it struck the lobby like a bell rung at high noon. When you judge someone, at the very least, check their name first. No one moved, no one spoke. Douglas, once the emblem of authority in this space, now stood like a wax statue, exposed in front of every staff member and guest. Celina turned away. She said nothing more. Her walk was resolute, each heel strike on the marble floor a final verdict. As she disappeared through the doors leading to the conference level, the only things left in the lobby were stunned silence, and the wide, horrified eyes of those who once thought they were the standard. Just hours after the seismic confrontation in the grand lobby of the Belgrave Room, a 46-second video began circulating, first on X, formerly Twitter, then TikTok, and finally Instagram. There was no shouting in the clip, no table pounding, just a black woman in a navy blue suit, walking into the lobby with undeniable presence. She placed a business card on the counter, and after a few tense seconds, she said only one sentence. "Before you judge someone, at least check their name." That was it. No additional words, no scripted drama, just a silent slap louder than any public speech. Online, the response hit like a tsunami. An anonymous account posted the video with a caption that read, "The host thought he was turning away a nobody. Didn't realize he was dismissing the CEO of the entire restaurant chain." Service with respect. Within 6 hours, the video surpassed 5 million views. The comments came flooding in. "This isn't subtle discrimination. This is elitist culture laid bare." She didn't need to raise her voice. She let the truth speak for her. Service with respect isn't an outrageous demand. It's the bare minimum. The hashtag # service with respect began trending nationwide in just 12 hours. Media outlets pounced. CNN, The New York Times, BuzzFeed, Bloomberg, all ran articles within 24 hours. Notable headlines included, "Black CEO mistaken for outsider in her own restaurant empire," and "Her calm response rocks the F&B world." When a single nod unraveled an entire system of soft discrimination. Celina Ward, the woman forcing the service industry to take a long look in the mirror. Within 48 hours, an in-depth segment on MSNBC compared the incident to a Rosa Parks moment for fine dining, a pivotal reckoning for the long-held notion of who belongs in upscale spaces. Stories began pouring in. From across the country, customers who once quietly left restaurants feeling out of place finally spoke up. A middle-aged woman in Atlanta shared, "I was once denied wine service because my dress looked cheap. Now I know. I wasn't imagining it." A second-generation Asian college student in New York recalled, "I came to Belgrave Room with a prestigious scholarship, but was looked at like a beggar just because I dined alone. I still remember that stare." Celina Ward never issued a statement. She didn't need to. The video, the moment, and the witnesses spoke on her behalf. For the next 3 days, she made no public appearances. But what she started had already become a movement. Ward Harlow Dining Group received over 7,000 emails from customers, partners, and former employees across the country. Some offered praise, some brought allegations, but all had one thing in common: an acknowledgement of the discrimination that had long been quietly ignored. Service with respect had become a declaration. No longer just a trending topic, it appeared in HR seminars, was printed on the new aprons of restructured locations, and, more importantly, had evolved into a moral standard that the restaurant industry could no longer afford to overlook. The morning after the viral video surpassed 20 million views, the conference room on the 32nd floor of Ward Harlow Dining Group headquarters in Providence was suffocating with tension. On the giant screen, headlines blazed across the room: "Restaurant Empire Exposed by Its Own CEO." "The Belgrave Room, a brand built on conditional exclusivity." Celina Ward entered, unnervingly calm. The dark navy suit had been replaced with a crisp white blouse. Her hair was tied back high. She didn't say a word. She simply placed a 32-page printed report on the glass table in the center of the room. Customer Conduct Audit Report. The Belgrave Room, 18-month period. The CMO swallowed hard. The COO glanced nervously at Vincent Drake, a major shareholder and longtime supporter of Douglas Harlow. The room held its collective breath. Douglas Harlow was terminated that very day. No prior notice, no farewell meeting. Just a brief email from HR, and his building access was deactivated at exactly 11:47 a.m. The media caught wind of it within the hour. Belgrave Room manager fired within 72 hours of customer discrimination incident. Ward Harlow acts faster than the press, but is it enough? The stock began to shake. On Nasdaq, WHDG fell 4.2% in a single morning. Though the company insisted it was a temporary fluctuation, analysts had a different view. This isn't just a scandal. This is a trust crisis, especially with younger consumers who prioritize social equity. Bloomberg Financial Desk. The shareholders started to speak. An emergency meeting was called. All board members, major investors, internal communications representatives, everyone was present. Vincent Drake, former strategic advisor during the Belgrave Room's expansion phase, spoke first. "We're being dragged into a crisis caused by one individual's reckless judgment." Celina said nothing. She waited. Then she opened her laptop and displayed on the screen 17 ignored internal emails from staff reporting discriminatory behavior. 6 customer complaints that were never addressed. 1 employee training report signed but never implemented. She looked up, eyes locked on Vincent. "So tell me, who exactly is that one individual?" Vincent didn't respond. Public pressure surged. Customers flooded hotlines, email inboxes, and mailed letters to headquarters. Independent journalists began live streaming in front of the Belgrave Room in Providence, interviewing guests who had once felt unseen. An Asian-American man recalled, "They brought me the bill before I even finished my entree." A single mother shared, When I ordered from the standard menu, the server asked if I could afford it. Other locations of Ward Harlow Dining Group across the US, in Las Vegas, Miami, New York, Boston, all began to panic. Each sent urgent requests to HQ for guidance on how to handle the fallout. It was a media earthquake, and Celina did not hide. Contrary to PR's advice to go silent and let the news cycle fade, Celina hosted a company-wide internal live stream with nearly 18,000 employees watching simultaneously. Facing the camera, she said bluntly, "If anyone feels threatened by this change, perhaps they never truly deserved their position to begin with. I'm not protecting an empire, I'm protecting people." And then the reform began. A system-wide email was sent at 6:12 p.m., titled simply, "From Service to Mission." One line shocked the entire organization. Effective the 1st of next month, every employee, from front desk to head chef, will undergo mandatory retraining in service equity and bias elimination. If you do not agree, you may resign. No explanation required. The first week after the Belgrave Room incident unfolded like a quiet earthquake. The media frenzy had died down. The viral videos faded from headlines. But inside Ward Harlow Dining Group, a sweeping transformation had begun, branch by branch, department by department. A new training system was launched. At 9 a.m. sharp on Monday, the company distributed a 104-page internal manual to all 147 restaurant locations across the country, accompanied by a memo titled, "Redefining Service, We Don't Serve Status, We Serve People." The document laid out mandatory 3-day in-person training for all frontline staff, focusing on recognizing unconscious bias, inclusive communication techniques, handling subtle discriminatory behavior. Mid-level managers were required to attend organizational psychology reflection sessions, re-evaluating long-standing leadership habits and systemic bias embedded in the culture. The executive team would conduct quarterly undercover behavior audits at 20 random branches, 5 of which would be conducted personally by the CEO or senior directors in disguise. Janelle Rivers was promoted. In a move that stunned the entire organization, Celina Ward announced the promotion of Janelle Rivers, the young server who had dared to speak the truth, to the role of Regional Service Supervisor, Providence Division, tasked with redefining the service culture across flagship properties. At the announcement, Celina didn't give a long speech. She simply said, "She saw what we didn't. Now she'll help us fix it." Janelle wept as she stepped forward to accept the role. She had once been laughed at by colleagues for taking service too seriously. Now she was the standard everyone else was asked to follow. Behind training doors, the masks came off. At the Belgrave Room location in Miami, a veteran server admitted during a workshop, "I didn't mean to discriminate, I just thought people in designer shoes tipped more, so I paid more attention to them." The trainer asked, "So if a mom walks in wearing jeans with her kid, she deserves less attention?" The room fell silent. At the Seattle location, a head chef murmured, "We weren't serving based on what people needed. We were serving based on what we assumed they were." Branches began to transform. New York. The Manhattan flagship voluntarily dismantled its VIP table zone, replacing it with a policy of universal premium service. Dallas. A manager personally wrote a letter of apology to a customer who once complained of being belittled while ordering, attaching a lifetime dining voucher. San Francisco, a team of staff proposed Fair Service Week, inviting previously marginalized guests back for a complimentary meal each day. Vincent Drake, the opposition, struck back. As the reform spread, Vincent Drake, major shareholder and longtime supporter of status-based hospitality, fired off a letter to the board, accusing Celina of turning a luxury brand into a glorified upscale diner. In a leaked email he wrote, "People don't pay $300 for dinner to be treated like everyone else. They pay to feel like they're the only ones." His statement ignited a firestorm online, sparking debates across forums and social media. Celina didn't argue, she responded with data. At the end of week board meeting, she calmly presented, 8 pilot locations implementing the new reforms showed a 14% revenue increase within 3 weeks. Customer ratings on platforms like Yelp and TripAdvisor rose from 4.1 to 4.6. Return visits doubled year over year. She closed with one line, "We're not losing customers. We're choosing the kind of customer we deserve." For the first time in years, across the Ward Harlow restaurant empire, people stopped asking who gets the window seat and started asking, did that guest feel respected? It was the sign of a silent revolution. Steady, deliberate, an empire finally peeling off its polished mask to take an honest look in the mirror. In a high-rise office in Providence's financial district, Vincent Drake sat silently in a private boardroom. No press, no social media, only the familiar faces of veteran shareholders who had helped build the Belgrave Room when it was still just 3 locations. On the table sat a 300-page printed dossier, 5-year financial outlook and tiered model risk assessment. But the title was a decoy. The true weapon lay in the appendix, a petition proposing a vote of no confidence against Celina Ward, citing strategic brand misalignment and damage to the traditional value of premium clientele. Vincent didn't need the press, he needed control. Unlike Douglas Harlow, who wielded arrogance out in the open, Vincent was the dark corridor. Never on TV, never in interviews, always speaking through others. And everyone who had ever gone up against him knew. When Vincent made his move, the game was no longer fair. "We need to take the model back," he said, "before this revolution turns the company into a cafeteria with chandeliers." A younger board member hesitantly interjected, "But Celina's reports show increased revenue." Vincent cut him off with a look sharp enough to draw blood. "Short-term revenue doesn't reflect brand value. We're not selling food, we're selling status." The shadow campaign began. Vincent scheduled one-on-one meetings with every board member, even the neutral ones, leveraging his personal influence. A string of anonymous internal emails began circulating, questioning the ability to retain premium market share if the company continued its mass appeal policies. A confidential internal poll was launched under the guise of strategic review, but in truth it was a thermometer for Celina's influence. Celina was surrounded by silence. At recent board meetings, fewer heads nodded in agreement. Some avoided eye contact. Others muttered they needed more data before weighing in. It was Janelle Rivers, now service supervisor, who noticed the first real signal. "Celina, I heard some mid-level managers were summoned for private meetings without notifying the reform team." Celina only smiled, but inside she knew. This wasn't just a battle for values anymore, it was a battle for command. And her opponent, Vincent Drake, was a master tactician in power games. The midnight call. Late that night, Celina received a phone call from Helen Moretti, a retired board member and former confidant of her late father, the former CEO. "Vincent is repeating the exact playbook he used in 2009 to push your father out of the West Coast expansion," Helen warned. He won't attack directly. He makes people doubt themselves. Celina asked quietly, "Then what should I do?" There was a pause. Then Helen replied, "Don't argue, act, bring the truth into the light. But let someone else be the one to tell it." And then from the unlikeliest place came a spark. Lucille Harper, the elderly woman once mocked for ordering soup, appeared in a testimonial video originally produced by the internal marketing team for training purposes. The video had not been intended for public release, but when the communications team watched the cut, they unanimously agreed. It had to go on Ward Harlow's official homepage. In the video, Lucille says, "I didn't come to the restaurant to be treated like a queen. I came to feel like I still matter." And that night, a girl named Celina, I didn't know who she was, looked at me like I was a person, not a receipt. The video spread like wildfire, not because of polish, but because of raw truth. And for the first time, the public rallied behind Celina, not because she was CEO, but because she stood for something that felt human. Vincent Drake sensed the crack, but didn't flinch. He responded with a single line in an email to the full board. "We may win with emotion, but Monarch was built with reason. Don't let sentiment replace strategy." The vote of no confidence was scheduled, 72 hours from now. The final battle had been drawn, but the question remained, would this empire be saved by reason, or by remembering what it means to serve with dignity? That afternoon, the 38th floor of Ward Harlow Dining Group's headquarters was sealed tight. No knocking, no journalists, no assistants allowed entry, only the 13 members of the board, each holding the power to decide the fate of the CEO, Celina Ward. Outside, Providence lay under a thin veil of rain, but inside the boardroom, the air thickened with tension, suspicion, and calculation. Vincent Drake stepped forward, wearing a charcoal suit and a deep crimson tie, the color of warning. His voice was low, deliberate, every word weighted with intention. "We are not here out of sentiment. We are here for the future of a brand that once stood for distinction." He swept his eyes across the table, pausing longer on several older faces, those he had once mentored when they were just junior sales directors. "I do not deny Celina's efforts, but I must ask, is she protecting the brand, or redefining it into something unrecognizable?" He presented a slide, 12% decline in traditional clientele, 18% rise in VIP reservation cancellations within 45 days. This is what happens when we trade exclusivity for mass appeal. Celina didn't respond right away. Instead, she stood, silently placing a thin folder onto the glass table. The title read, "Ward Harlow, The Forgotten Faces." No charts, no percentages, only images, captured from internal security cameras, of guests who had been poorly treated for looking not upscale enough. "What we're losing isn't revenue, it's the soul we promised we'd protect." She turned on the large screen behind her. A video began playing, raw, unpolished. Lucille Harper, her voice steady, her words unfiltered. "I don't need anyone to bow to me, I just want to be looked at. Without disdain." A middle-aged director scratched his head. A major shareholder leaned forward. Vincent's grip on the table tightened, his earlier composure slipping. He snapped, "We cannot run a corporation on fleeting emotions." Celina looked at him, calm, unwavering. "You call it emotion, I call it humanity. And if a brand has no humanity, does it still deserve to exist?" A beat of silence froze the entire room. Then a voice broke through, faint but firm. "I used to support Vincent, but after 20 years in this industry, I know this. When staff fear the poor, when waiters scoff at cheap orders, we've lost the most basic value of all: respect. The speaker was Howard Mercer, the oldest member of the board, long known for his neutrality. His words hung in the air like a suspended verdict. The vote began. Each member marked their ballot in silence. No glances exchanged. When the results were announced, 7 votes to keep Celina, 6 votes to replace her, a narrow victory. But a victory nonetheless. Vincent Drake gathered his leather case, rising slowly. Before exiting, he paused beside Celina. "You won today, but you've set a precedent. And precedents are harder to defend than profits." Celina responded evenly. "I'm not here to defend. I'm here to bring transparency. And that's something the Belgrave Room never had. Until I arrived." Vincent left without looking back. Behind the closed doors, no one clapped, no one cheered. But a choice had been made. Ward Harlow had chosen a new path, where no guest would ever be seated near the kitchen just for wearing an old coat, and every diner would be seen by name. 3 days after the board meeting, the shockwaves hadn't settled. Although Celina Ward had retained her CEO seat, the media didn't see it as a victory, but as a civil war brewing inside Ward Harlow Dining Group. Headlines read, "A CEO betrayed by the founder's circle." "A loud revolution in a quiet dining room." Celina remained silent. No rebuttals, no interviews. She was waiting for something else. Validation from the voices that had never been given permission to speak. Then came an email. No subject line, no signature. "I was one of the servers told to seat based on appearance. I was warned that letting the wrong type of guest sit in the center dining room would get me reassigned to night shifts. I never dared say a word until the day you stood up in that boardroom." Attached was a 17-minute audio recording. In it, Douglas Harlow, the former manager, was clearly instructing staff to know who deserves the premium seats, fine wine, and warmest hospitality. Celina didn't send the recording to the press. She forwarded it to the board of directors and waited. At the same time, a second video began spreading. No media coverage, no edits. It was Janelle Rivers, the server who had once spoken truth, now giving a quiet interview to a small local YouTube channel. Her voice was plain-spoken, raw. "I don't think I was brave. I just didn't want to work in a place where I had to ignore how others were being humiliated." The video surpassed 2 million views in just 48 hours. The hashtag #service with respect returned to the trending list. Then the unthinkable happened. A special guest arrived at the Belgrave Room. Unannounced, no entourage. Mayor Raymond Everett of Providence walked into the restaurant. Wearing a simple raincoat, no name tag, no reservation. He requested a table for one by the window. No one recognized him, except Janelle, and she treated him just like any other guest. After the meal, he stood up and left behind a folded note. "This was my first time dining at the Belgrave Room and feeling like just another person, not a politician. And that, more than anything, tells me Celina Ward was right." The note was photographed and shared online. The city erupted. The board called an emergency meeting, not to question Celina's authority, but to vote on approving the non-discriminatory service standard across all Ward Harlow locations. A proposal Celina had once put forth and been told was not yet market appropriate. When the chairman called the vote, something unexpected happened. 9 out of 13 board members voted yes. Among them, 3 who had voted against Celina days earlier. When asked why, one simply said, "We used to believe in silence. She made us believe in the opposite." Celina didn't hold a press conference. Instead, she walked into the central kitchen of the Belgrave Room, where 27 staff members were prepping for a packed Saturday night. She didn't speak of victory. She simply said, "Starting tomorrow, every guest, no matter what they wear or what they order, must be treated like someone we hope will return." No applause, but the kitchen paused, and someone, maybe Janelle, whispered, "Finally, a kitchen for all." 3 weeks after the board officially passed the new service standard, the Belgrave Room had changed so much that even long-time employees could barely recognize it. Gone were the judgmental glances at who walked in. Gone were the side eyes at shoes, handbags, or how someone ordered their meal. In their place was something rare. A calmness, the most luxurious thing of all, in a place that once defined excellence by quietly excluding those who didn't measure up. Celina Ward didn't show up often anymore. She had returned to Ward Harlow Dining Group's headquarters, focused on expanding the new standard across over 70 locations nationwide. But every Friday afternoon, without warning, she would quietly stop by the Belgrave Room. Just as she had the first time. She no longer sat by the kitchen like before, but she didn't choose the center of the dining room either. She chose a small table by the window, looking out at the street, watching people walk in, some in tailored suits, some in faded shirts, holding sleeping children on their shoulders. They were all greeted with the same smile. One day, a handwritten letter was left on Celina's table. No return address, no name. "You don't know me, but I came to the Belgrave 8 years ago, wore an old coat, ordered a bowl of soup. I was told there were no tables. I wasn't angry, just sad. I had once dreamed of proposing to my wife here. Today I came back. No one asked what car I drove. No one glanced at my watch. I ordered soup and was served like a regular. Thank you, not for saving a restaurant, but for saving the feeling of being worthy in a place that once told me I wasn't." Celina folded the letter gently. She said nothing. In a televised interview weeks later, the host asked, "Celina, now that you've won this battle, how do you feel?" She smiled just faintly. "I didn't win, because if I had won, someone else would have lost. But if every guest who walks into one of my restaurants no longer feels the need to prove their worth, then that is a victory, and that victory doesn't belong to me. It belongs to all of us." Janelle Rivers, now a senior service supervisor, stood by the bar, watching guests come and go. She remembered the first time she served Lucille Harper, the older woman who once ordered a simple soup and was mocked for it. Now Lucille returned, still in her worn grey sweater, but this time with her granddaughter. The little girl reached up to the table and whispered, "Can I eat here too?" Janelle knelt beside her and smiled. "Sweetheart, you never have to ask that here. Here, everyone gets to eat." And so the story ends. Not with applause, not with awards, not with bold headlines, but with quiet things. A guest no longer afraid to order the cheapest dish. An employee no longer afraid to speak the truth. A CEO who doesn't need to raise her voice, because kindness now speaks for itself. The Belgrave Room is no longer a place for the right kind of people. It has become a place where everyone is served with dignity, no conditions attached. Celina Ward didn't lead a revolution. She merely reminded the world of a forgotten principle. Everyone deserves to be treated like a human being. Have you ever stepped into a luxurious place, only to feel their eyes asking, "Do I even belong here?" Celina Ward didn't break the system. She simply held a mirror to it. She never shouted that she was the CEO. She let her actions speak, and those actions, quiet, firm, uncompromising, transformed an arrogant restaurant into a symbol of organized compassion. They used to say, "The customer is king," but they never defined what that king should look like. What color skin, what kind of clothes, how expensive the order had to be. So tomorrow, if you're the one behind the front desk, if you're a server, a manager, or someone leading an entire system, will you choose to look at people with judgment or with dignity? Service with respect is not a slogan, it's a reminder. No one should have to prove their worth just to be treated like a human being. If you've ever been treated like you weren't good enough, share your story in the comments. And if you've ever, intentionally or not, made someone else feel that way, don't stay silent. Change begins with recognition. Subscribe to this channel so you won't miss the stories that are forcing entire systems to take a long, hard look at themselves.